Currency conversion has to be one of my favorite topics in the payment space. Through my career, I've had the privilege of digging deep into transaction details, authorization, clearing, settlement, and disputes. Currency conversion affects and is affected by each of these. Life is so simple when transactions run in one country, on one network, and in one currency. The challenge is that our world has moved from local domestic markets to an integrated worldwide economy with many countries and many currencies. So, for anyone in the payments industry, currency conversion is a thing that we need to know and master. I've been asked many questions about currency conversion over the years. How do payment networks handle currency conversion? Where can currency conversions happen? How can I tell where and how a currency conversion is taking place? Let's talk through these questions as we make sense of currency conversion. A quick contextual note. I've spent many years responding to support inquiries about currency conversion. However, during that time, I worked at MasterCard. Therefore, the concepts of what I cover apply to every payment network that handles more than one currency. However, for the details, I'll use the ones I'm most familiar with, the MasterCard way of handling currency and currency conversion. Some currency conversion vocabulary. As I started writing the script for this video, I realized I needed to define some terms I will be using through this discussion. Here's our dictionary of currency conversion terms. Base currency. In currency conversion, we are comparing one currency's value to another currency's value. A payment network will choose one currency as its base currency, the currency it will compare all other currencies' values to. This currency is also the one the network runs its transactions under. More about that in a few minutes. Buy rate, sell rate, mid rate. These three rates are used in currency conversion. The first two make sense: the cost to buy the currency and the cost to sell the currency. These rates will be slightly different from each other. More about that in the next definition. The mid rate is often used when the base currency is being used as a reference and no transaction currency is actually happening. Spread. This is the difference between the buy and sell rates. Companies who do currency conversion make their money on the spread. Cross rate. For currency pairs that are frequently used, a payment network may set up cross rates so that there appears to be one currency conversion between these two currency pairs instead of converting currency 1 to base currency to currency 2. I know these definitions sound a bit cryptic at the moment. We will use them in context shortly, and then they'll be easier to understand. What is currency conversion? In card payments, we talk about currency conversion when the merchant currency for a transaction and the payment card settlement currency are different. For a transaction to complete and settle, it must be represented in the currency provided by the merchant and the different currency used by the customer's payment card. This requires a currency conversion. Currency conversion can happen in several different ways. Number 1. The payment network can convert the transaction currency from the merchant currency to the cardholder currency as the transaction moves through the payment network. Number 2. The issuer can offer currency conversion services to the cardholder. This may include a prepaid card in a specific currency or a multi-currency card. Number 3. The merchant at the payment terminal may offer to convert the transaction amount from the merchant currency to the cardholder currency. This is often called dynamic currency conversion. Number 4. The merchant may change the currency of the items or services they offer based on the shopping currency selected by the customer. Let's go through each of these in detail. Payment network currency conversion. There is one significant point we must cover before we can discuss or understand network currency conversion. Each computer network has a language. In IT geek speak, we call it the network protocol. All devices connected to the network must use the same protocol or language to be able to communicate with each other. In the same way, each financial network will also use one currency for all transactions. This is called the base currency. Let's look at how this plays out. For our example, this international payment network uses US dollars as its base currency. If the merchant and the payment card are identified as USD on the network, the transaction stays in USD all the way through the transaction path. No currency conversion is done. If the merchant and the cardholder are using the same non-USD currency, say Canadian dollars since I'm in Canada, the network receives the transaction in Canadian dollars from the merchant. The network converts the Canadian dollar amount to the base currency, US dollars. The network routes the transaction in USD. The network will convert the transaction back to Canadian dollars as it hands it off to the issuer. The network will use the Canadian to US mid-rate for both currency conversions. This gives the appearance of a same currency transaction without the network needing to support multiple currencies within the network. So, if the merchant and cardholder use the same non-USD currency, the conversion to base currency and back is done at the mid-rate. If the merchant currency and the cardholder currencies are different, let's say Brazilian real merchant and a Canadian dollar payment card, the network will use the buy and sell rates for the currency conversion. Typically, the network converts the merchant currency to base currency at the buy rate, BRL to USD. The network routes the transaction in base currency through the network to the issuer. As the network hands the transaction off to the issuer, the base rate is converted to the issuer currency at the sell rate. For currency pairs that have a lot of activity between them, the network often creates cross rates between those currency pairs. This allows the network to appear to convert directly from the merchant currency to the cardholder currency without using the base currency. In the MasterCard network, Mexican pesos to Canadian dollars is one such cross rate. So, you can see that the payment network uses one mechanism, converting all transactions to and from base currency. What changes are the currency conversion rates that are used. No currency conversion when the merchant and the cardholder are both in base currency. Mid-rate, when the merchant and the cardholder currencies are the same non-base currency. Or buy and sell rates when the merchant and cardholder currencies are different from each other. Finding the currency conversion details. I will provide you with the MasterCard data elements for currency conversion details. As MasterCard uses ISO 8583 for authorization messages, these data elements are likely to be similar to other networks. The MasterCard clearing file format is proprietary, so other payment networks may have the same information in different transaction record fields than MasterCard. In the authorization, here are the ISO 8583 data elements related to currency and currency conversion. MasterCard uses the same data elements for currency and clearing, so we'll be discussing both authorization and clearing together. Oh, a quick note. MasterCard calls its transaction fields data elements, or DE for short. Visa calls them bitmaps. As my native language is Mastercardian, I will alternate between data element and DE as I talk about the fields in the transaction record. Data element 4. This holds the transaction amount in the currency the merchant submitted the transaction to the network. DE49, the numeric currency code for the DE4 value. Data element 5, the settlement amount. Please note that in the MasterCard authorization, this amount and its corresponding currency code data element will always be in the network-based currency of US dollars. In the clearing record, this field will be in the settlement currency of the party settling the transaction. Acquirer for the merchant, or issuer for the cardholder. DE50, the settlement currency code. Always 840 US dollars in a MasterCard authorization. In the clearing, this data element will be the settlement currency code for the DE5 settlement amount. Data element 6, cardholder billing amount. This is a courtesy field provided by MasterCard. It shows the purchase amount converted to the cardholder currency. In clearing, many, maybe most issuers add a 2.5% currency conversion bump to this amount before posting the transaction to the cardholder account. DE51, cardholder billing currency, the currency code for the amount in DE6. DE9, settlement currency conversion rate. Please note that this field is calculated dividing DE4 amount by the DE5 amount to give a net currency conversion rate. DE10, cardholder billing currency conversion rate. This field is calculated dividing the DE4 amount by the DE6 amount to give a net currency conversion rate. Over the years, I've been asked some recurring questions about network currency conversion. Here are two of them. Number 1, why is the currency conversion rate in the authorization different than in the posting record? The first cause is the difference between the network currency conversion rate and the issuer currency conversion rate. Typically, an issuer will take the network currency conversion rate and add a bump of, say, 2.5% to the network currency conversion rate. Check your payment card terms and conditions document. You'll find the issuer currency conversion rate mentioned there. Unfortunately, issuers typically only add the issuer bump to the posting record, not to the authorization. This causes the posting amount to be slightly higher than the authorization hold amount for the foreign currency transaction. The second cause is delayed posting. Networks typically set currency conversion rates each day. Therefore, the currency conversion rates are different every day. For approved authorizations, some networks will hold the currency conversion rate used in the approved authorization and use it for the posting record if it is posted within a certain number of days from the authorization date. For any transaction posted later than that hold date, the currency conversion rate is recalculated with the payment network's current currency conversion rate. This will cause a difference between the authorization and posting currency conversion rates. Question number 2. If the network currency conversion rate is set daily, why do the currency conversion rates on my statement vary so much on the same day? I used to get this question a lot. There are two factors that work together to make this illusion happen. The network currency conversion rates typically extend to 6 decimal places. However, most currencies only have 2 decimal places. Therefore, every currency conversion needs to be rounded. If the two currencies don't have a cross rate, then the amounts are rounded twice per transaction. Merchant currency is converted to base currency and rounded. Then base currency is converted to cardholder currency and rounded. The other factor. This may be a MasterCard unique thing or maybe an issue with other payment networks as well. The currency conversion rate you see on your statement is not the currency conversion rate that was used. Let me explain. I'm on vacation in the Dominican Republic. I purchased something for 60 Dominican pesos. My home country is Canada, and my payment currency is Canadian dollars. The network converts the 60 Dominican peso purchase to US dollars, network-based currency, at 0.017015 for a US dollar amount of 1.0209. Since USD currency only has 2 decimal places, this is rounded to $1.02 USD. The network then converts the $1.02 USD to Canadian dollars at a rate of 1.373200 for a Canadian amount of 1.400664. This rounds to $1.40 Canadian. The network then calculates a net currency conversion rate by dividing the $1.40 Canadian by the 60 Dominican pesos. This gives a net exchange rate of 0.023333. Say I go to another merchant on the same day and purchase something for 83 Dominican pesos. We do the same math through base currency to Canadian dollars, and the net currency conversion rate comes out at 0.023373. You can see that the currency conversion rate appears to bounce. This is a mirage caused by the rounding and reverse calculating of the net currency conversion rates from the rounded numbers. Even if I'm using a cross-rate currency conversion, the rounding will change the rate. For example, 240 Mexican pesos to Canadian dollars at a conversion rate of 0.072165 equals 17.319600 Canadian. This rounds to 1732 Canadian. Reverse the calculating the currency conversion rate, 1732 divided by 240, gives an exchange rate of 0.072167, which is different than the actual currency conversion rate used. I have been asked, why doesn't the payment network just give you the actual rates used? Because of rounding, it would look like the amounts are wrong, especially if 2 currency conversions have occurred. I think a calculated net currency conversion rate is the least confusing method. The payment network's got this one right. Oh, another quick note. Remember we mentioned the issuer bump 2.5%? On my purchase of 240 Mexican pesos, the authorization would show $17.32 Canadian amount, but my posting record with the issuer bump would show the transaction as $17.75 Canadian. Hey, can you tell I really enjoy this currency conversion stuff? All this currency conversion is going on all day in multiple currencies across a few hundred countries. At the end of the day, this all has to be settled, each issuer paying in their settlement currency and each acquirer receiving funds in their settlement currency. Watch my video, Why is Settlement and Reconciliation So Messy?, to get inside of how this settlement happens. Issuer currency conversion. We have already mentioned one way an issuer can participate in the payment network currency conversion. The issuer currency conversion bump, typically around 2.5%, added to the payment network currency conversion rate. There are other ways an issuer can play in the currency conversion part of the transaction. Number 1. Currency-specific prepaid travel cards. These cards have gained some popularity for people who want to travel to a destination but want to have their currency conversion done ahead of time. The issuer will take in the funds from the customer, say in Canadian dollars in my country, and convert them to the destination currency, say euro, at a rate the issuer chooses to use. These funds are kept in a prepaid account at the issuer or issuer processor. The cardholder goes to Europe and transacts in euros. The transactions settle in euros because the network knows that the card is a euro-denominated card. As long as the merchant is billing the transaction in euro, everything works well with no additional currency conversions. There are times when a prepaid currency card backfires. I've seen it where, say, a merchant sees that the customers are Canadian and offers to convert their purchase from euro to Canadian dollars. If the customer says yes, then the merchant will submit the transaction to the payment network in Canadian dollars. This Canadian dollar amount will be converted by the network back to euro because the customer used their prepaid card that has a listed currency of euro. Number 2. Multi-currency cards are a niche market. They are useful for small businesses that transact internationally or frequent travelers who move between currency markets. An example would be a card that offers Canadian dollars, US dollars, euro, and pound sterling. The issuer sets up a client record with separate accounts for each currency. The multi-currency card is attached to all of these currency accounts. On the payment network, the card bin range is identified as multi-currency with settlement set up for each of the currencies. Quick note. One of the currencies must be set up on the payment network as a default settlement currency. That way, any transaction that is not in the defined currencies will settle in that default currency. For example, this card is linked to Canadian dollar, US dollar, euro, and pound sterling accounts. Its default settlement currency on the payment network is Canadian dollars. If I do a transaction in euro, it settles in euro. If I do a transaction in US dollars, it settles in US dollars. If I do a transaction in Mexican pesos, since there isn't a Mexican peso account, the transaction will be converted to Canadian dollars, the default currency, to settle. The issuer's currency conversion opportunities on this product are as follows. The cardholder funding the various currency accounts. The issuer converts the funds provided by the cardholder to the currency of the account specified by the cardholder. The cardholder moving funds between the accounts is also an issuer currency conversion opportunity. Thirdly, the issuer may also set up one of the accounts as a default account. Should one of the other currency accounts, say euro, not have enough money for a transaction, the issuer will, on the fly, convert funds from the default account, say Canadian dollars, to the euro account to fund that transaction. So, how can you spot a prepaid currency card or a multi-currency card by looking at the transaction record? For a prepaid currency card, you will see that the cardholder billing currency in DE51 is not the default currency of the issuer country. That is your clue to determine that this card is a specific currency card. For a multi-currency card, DE51 is where we'll look as well. The difference is we'll need to look at a number of transactions with different merchant currencies in DE49. We'll see that as DE49 changes, DE51 will match it. These are the different supported currencies for that card. When we see a mismatch between DE49 and 51, we'll know that the merchant currency is not supported by this card. We'll also identify the default settlement currency for the card in DE51. Merchant currency conversion. There are two ways for a merchant to play in the currency conversion space. The first is dynamic currency conversion, or DCC. This is becoming increasingly popular at ATMs and POS terminals, especially in high tourism areas. I remember on my last vacation to the US, I stopped by a clothing store and did some shopping. I took my items to the checkout to purchase them. Everything rang through in US dollars. When I put my Canadian dollar credit card in the terminal to pay, the merchant DCC app read the network bin table and saw that my card's currency was Canadian dollars. The app then converted the USD total of my purchase to Canadian dollars at an exchange rate from its currency conversion table. The terminal then asked me if I'd like to pay for my purchase in Canadian dollars. Payment networks have very stringent rules on how DCC is presented to the cardholder. This is because, in its early days, a number of cardholders felt they were tricked into using the merchant's currency conversion rate. Today, the terminal must show the currency conversion rate, the transaction amount in the merchant currency, the transaction amount in the cardholder currency, The yes and no buttons on the terminal must be clearly marked and the same size, and there are a number of other rules. I think DCC is here to stay. Since the merchant comes before the payment network or the issuer in the transaction flow, they get first dibs at offering currency conversion. Okay, well actually the issuer who offers currency cards or multi-currency cards is first in the transaction flow, but since most issuers just have regular credit and debit cards, the merchant is first in most transactions. But getting back to the merchant DCC, as long as the merchant can match or beat the currency conversion rate of the payment network plus the issuer 2.5%, they offer the cardholder a better deal. However, it is the cardholder that needs to do the math to figure out if the merchant rate is better or worse than what they would get through the network and their issuer. How do we identify DCC? I will give you the MasterCard answer. Other networks will have similar information, but it may be in different locations in the transaction record. Here are the critical MasterCard authorization data elements that can be used together to identify DCC. DE61 sub-element 13, Merchant Country Code. Look for this to be different from the transaction currency code in DE49. DE49 and DE51 are the same currency code, and the merchant country code is not the same as these two. This shows that the merchant is not using their home country currency, but matching the cardholder billing currency for the transaction. The merchant is supposed to identify a DCC transaction in DE54 of the authorization. There, the merchant is to identify this is a DCC transaction and provide the original pre-converted currency code and the transaction amount in that currency. The first two tests work everywhere in the world except in the Eurozone, because there, one currency code is used across multiple country codes. To identify Eurozone DCC transactions, you will need to use DE54. The other currency conversion method is where the merchant changes all the pricing on their store to the customer currency. All the customer shopping and checkout experience happens in the currency they have selected. This can be used best by online merchants. The interesting thing is that this second method is not considered merchant currency conversion or DCC by the payment networks. DCC, as per the payment networks, is when I shop in one currency and am given an offer to pay in a different currency at the checkout. Let me give you an example. I won't name the online merchant. I just checked their website and it appears they don't offer this service anymore. Otherwise, I would gladly give you their URL so you can see how this works. This merchant sells musical instruments, and musical instruments are somewhere between a hobby and an addiction for me. I have shopped at this merchant a number of times in the past. When they offer this type of currency conversion, here's what would happen. I would go to their site. They would ask, "What country will we be shipping to?" I would choose Canada. "What currency will you be shopping in?" I would choose Canadian dollars. When I would select Canadian dollars, all the prices on the website would change from US dollars to Canadian dollars. Since all my shopping was done in the currency I was paying in, Canadian dollars, the payment network did not consider this dynamic currency conversion. However, the merchant had done the currency conversion and I was getting the benefit of it in their pricing. How can you identify this type of merchant? The transaction will look the same as the DCC transaction, except there is no DCC information in DE54. When I would research this type of transaction, I would go to the merchant website to verify if they indeed do offer shopping in different currencies. There is always the possibility that this transaction was from a non-compliant DCC merchant who left the required DE54 information out of the transaction. Here are a couple of extra notes in closing. First note, in talking about currency conversion, we have talked mostly about merchant and cardholder billing currencies. I have left issuer and acquirer settlement currencies out of the discussion up to this point. There is a cost for each settlement currency an issuer or an acquirer supports. These costs include fees from the network for each currency settlement supported, banking fees for accounts for the different currencies, fees to corresponding banks if the foreign currency accounts are housed in banks in other countries, additional accounting expenses for each supported currency, and so on. Transaction currency and settlement currency do not have to be the same. Sometimes, when a currency portfolio is small, the customer-facing side of the product will be the unique currency, i.e. euro, while the issuer or acquirer will settle with the network in their home country currency, i.e. Canadian dollars. Issuers or acquirers who have significant multi-currency lines of business will likely support multiple currency settlement, settling the transactions in the currencies they occurred in. Second note, in this video we have talked mostly from an issuer perspective. That is because more data elements show up at the issuer end of the transaction than at the merchant and acquirer end. The merchant and acquirer never see the cardholder billing currencies or the cardholder transaction amounts, DE6, 10, and 51. They simply see the transaction amount, DE4, and its currency code, DE49, their settled amount, DE5, and its currency code, DE50, and the calculated currency conversion rate in DE9. So, just subtract the cardholder information, DE6, 10, and 51 from what we've covered, and you will have the merchant and acquirer side of this story. I hope you've enjoyed this video on currency conversion as much as I've enjoyed making it for you. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. If you have more questions about the payments industry, leave a message in the comments below. You can also contact me through my website, mentoredbymarkt.com, or via email, markt@mentoredbymarkt.com.